Bueller? Bueller? Anyone? Anyone? It's showtime. Hello, everyone, and welcome to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host, and as today is Halloween, is it a trick or is it a treat? Well, the trick is that it's PWD Allies podcast, and the treat is we have a lovely guest that's going to be joining us today on part three.
Can we guess who it is? Bueller? Bueller?
Bueller? Bueller?
Anyone? Anyone?
Anyone. And joining me today is Neil Matheson from Surrey, British Columbia. And I'm broadcasting from the capital region of BC, Victoria, British Columbia. A little bit overcast today, kind of a spooky, kind of a gloomy day. The storm is coming in. It should make it a very eventful day. Anyway, with that being said, today I have my lovely guest joining me for part three, Cassandra Pollock from Calgary, Alberta. And Cassandra, we're going to continue on where we left off about a little lovely history of Canada for people with disabilities.
Walk us down memory lane.
Yeah, so this is really about how social programs, there's a timeline of how social programs, but specifically including disability programs started in Canada. And I think I've mentioned before, the labor movement, which amalgamated into the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, which was the early edition of the NDP, was behind that, along with like small farming groups like the UFA, which is the United Farmers of Alberta, and other small farming groups. And they really saw a need through different things. Like, there was after the war, there was the Great Depression, and things like that really led to a lot of these social programs. And so yeah, and there's a specific timeline that I'm just I'm going to pull up my cheat sheet here because I did some lining it up because I otherwise I always I always forget things when I'm doing my research. I always leave stuff out, so I wanted to make sure.
The cheat sheet.
So yeah, basically in the early 20th century, like pre-1945, most Canadians with disabilities relied on families or private charities, and government disability benefits were conditional on an inability to work and a means test. Not unlike some programs now. There was a change later on, um, where it became more of basically more of a basic income type model, and then later on we kind of went back to this conditionality on ability to work, and maybe not to a lesser extent, but and means testing, which is where we're kind of fluctuating in that area right now between basic income and the old style of inability and means test. Yeah. So in 1908, Quebec, and this was of course, a major reason this happened was labor.
How old were you in 1908, Cassandra?
Ha ha ha! Yeah, my grandfather wasn't even born yet. But my great grandfather would have probably been a big. I mean, he was a CCF member, but he was also an early trade unionist. That he was at the 1919 general strike in Winnipeg, and so was Tommy. I don't know if they met, but Tommy Douglas was there too. But but so I do have some family history, and some of this has been ingrained in me. So 1908, the earliest kind of program related to disability was introduced in Quebec and Ontario, and it was workmen's compensation legislation for injured workers. And then World War One comes along, and basically they introduced some provinces introduced what's called a mother's allowance legislation, which was for what they deemed the worthy poor. So it was women that had been abandoned or widowed or single parents basically, and it was to help them, you know.
Worthy poor. That's
Interesting.
an interesting
The,
term.
Yeah.
yeah, well, like typically when it comes to like around the time of the mother's allowance, like if you were a man and you were out of work and you weren't at war or you were out of work,
Mhm.
you would have been put to a work camp.
Okay.
Mhm.
Right. And if
I
you were
remember hearing about that. Yes.
yeah, if you were a single woman with children to raise, then you would have gotten one of these mother's allowances.
Hmm.
And then in 1918, disability and death benefits were introduced for federal employees.
Mhm.
Mm.
And then, of course, 1919, um, like this is after World War One, and we've got all these veterans coming back, and of course, they're coming back with disabilities,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
so that's when they introduced the War Veterans Disability Pensions.
Mhm.
Um, and then in the 1920s, the Old Age Pensions Act devised a means tested distribution with federal and provincial cost sharing. So there was an Old Age Pension Act previously, but they devised a means tested distribution, and the federal and provincial governments cost shared on it. And then by 1927, the federal government introduced legislation for old age pensions cost shared with provinces. So 7 years later, 1930. So this is the now we're getting into the Great Depression too. The war
During
tran
her- yeah.
Yeah, the War Veterans Allowance Act extended coverage to veterans over 60, means tested. It was means tested and excluded women.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also in 1930, sales taxes and tariffs began to account for costs for people with visual and mobility impairments. And so by 1937, this was the first this is kind of the first disability income support program for persons with disabilities that were not war veterans, because up until this point it was like you were injured in war and then you got
Hmm.
something, and no
Right.
and if you weren't, you just got the same kind of welfare that somebody else would get that
Mhm.
was able-bodied. And so they in 1937, this is when they introduced the blind person's allowances, and it
Mm.
was a cost shared pension for the blind. So it was basically, like I said, cost shared with provincial and federal governments.
And so this was Canada-wide, was it?
Yeah, the
Or
1937 was
Interesting.
Canada-wide.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then post 1945, the mid 20th century, there started to be expansion of social programs. So 1940, the federal government introduced a nationwide unemployment insurance program.
Mhm.
1942, unemployment insurance became fully operational. And in 1944, the federal government introduced family allowances for children up to 16 years old.
Mhm.
Mm.
And then by 1945, blind persons were allowed disability related tax deductions. So, uh, like for the extra cost of living with a disability, because
Mhm.
even as far back as the 1940s and even before that, they recognized that the government did recognize in Canada that it costs more to live with a disability than it
Yeah.
does without one.
Mhm.
And so, but 1945, blind persons were allowed disability related tax deductions. And then in 1948 was the federal health grants began to fund rehabilitation. So federal government provided funding once provinces agreed to pay their share. So when
Mhm.
it was depended on negotiating with the provinces that they would pay 50% usually. And also they introduced several grants to support provincial health services.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until 1951 that the Blind Persons Act, um, which was the social welfare approach to income support for the blind, with higher benefit rates and equal provincial cost sharing. And then 1952, federal government introduced old age security, which was universal pensions for residents that were 70 years old and over. So not the
Mm.
65.
Okay.
And this replaced provincial cost sharing. And then also in 1952, provincial old age assistance introduced for people aged 65 to 69, which was cost sharing for federal government. And then 1954, is when the Disabled Persons Act. So that's a
Oh,
lot
so
of years between
yeah,
Yeah,
the,
quite.
like
Yeah.
we think they started with the blind in
yeah.
1937, and it wasn't until 1954
Uh,
Well, and
that they
let's
finally expanded that
yeah.
to from blind to other persons with disabilities between the ages of 18 and 69,
mm,
and it was based on very strict medical
Yeah.
diagnostic evidence.
So let's just do some quick math then. I did some quick math in my head, and that works out to 70 years now.
oh,
So it's interesting to think like 70 years, it seems like a long time, but in the grand scheme of things, 70 years is not that
Not
long. And when you think that the whole our whole social net, if or social
Yeah,
security net
well,
is basically an invention of the last 70 years. It's pretty amazing. Like it's not you're not going back that far in time. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, there's some more surprises. There's some really interesting because
Yeah.
we haven't even got to the point when the specific provincial disability programs that we see today
Hmm.
happened. Like
Okay.
this
Well, carry
happened
on.
way later.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so that was um so and
1954.
also in 54 that they legislation passed to permit the federal government to finance allowances for totally disabled adults of working age, cost sharing for provinces. And you know what the monthly benefit was in
Hmm,
1954?
hmm, yeah.
$65.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the unemployment in 1955, Unemployment Assistance Act introduced benefits for families, single individuals, provincially administered 50% unemployment assistance introduced by the federal government um, for unemployed and unemployable persons was provincially administered cost share.
Hmm,
And then 1957 was the disability related costs covered in Hospital Insurance and Diagnostics Act.
hmm,
Hmm.
So we didn't get like health like those kinds of health insurance things covered until 57, and
Hmm.
59 was the hospital insurance program was
Hmm.
proclaimed. 61 vocational rehab. So 1961 Vocational Rehabilitation of Disabled Persons Act. It was an attempt to move from
Hmm.
social welfare to increasing employment and merging
No.
federal and provincial financial support into one support system. But it's the
Hmm.
idea that we're moving away again from the idea like you know, that disabled shouldn't be able to work at all
hmm,
to now we
Hmm.
want disabled people to work.
Hmm.
hmm.
And yeah, I mean, we can discuss all the problems. It Quebec didn't introduce their schooling allowance for children until 61. Yeah. So then late 20th century targeted social and security and stuff was so 1964 was a youth allowance. But 1966 was the Canada Assistance Plan, which introduced federal government shared 50-50 with provinces welfare and social services costs, integrated into federal provincial cost sharing. So that was actually the federal fund that funded all the social programs, including the disability, and that was in 1966.
Hmm.
That's no longer in effect. The 70s and 80s, they finally put in modifications to the Canada Pension Disability and uh, flexed and loosened eligibility requirements,
Hmm.
and it indicated a shift from universal benefits to targeted social security.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay.
And 72, the new Unemployment Insurance Act was introduced with virtually universal coverage and increased benefits that were extended to maternity and sickness. And of course, as we know, sickness benefits even today include short-term disability, and you know, and so it was the late 80s, the development and use of unemployment insurance to encourage skills and development and employability, and that included for disabled people. A major change to the tax system. Of course, it was our disability tax credit. We all know about that. That was
Yeah.
introduced in 88. And interesting, the austerity measures of the 1990s actually reduced uh, CPP disability benefits and negatively affected eligibility. So they actually had expanded all of this stuff. And by the
Mm.
90s, when they did their austerity measures, a lot of it was on the backs of persons with disabilities again.
Yeah.
Oh my
Well,
And
God.
we can talk about that
that, oh yeah,
because like early 90s, that's
Yeah.
Mike Harcourt territory right there.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then so it was 96 to 97 they started the Canada Student Loan started to provide they
Yeah.
started to provide was 15 million to assist students with disabilities.
Hmm.
And then of course we all know about the Canadian Disability Benefit Act introduced in 2023, which
Mhm.
only just became live.
Oh,
But so there are, there's a highlight of federal the federal government's most important role has been the 2.5 billion per year for disability related activities undertaken by provinces through CAP and vocational rehabilitation of disabled persons, and it was approximately 3.3 billion per year through the Canada
mhm.
Pension Plan for Disability Pensions.
Mhm.
Also mentored. So several provinces introduced their own support programs, and I think this is interesting because you can see the earliest disability support programs were mostly through funding through the federal government, right? Like in cost sharing, and it was part of normal social assistance in a lot of ways. But
Mhm.
um, so when the provinces started introducing actual their own disability, it was a separate disability income support programs that they introduced. The very first provincial disability support program was created in Alberta, and it was established in 1978. I don't think it came into effect till 1979.
Mhm.
But it was the act was established in 78. So that was the very AISH that, which is what I'm on, was the very first disability income support program.
In
Yeah.
Canada.
Ontario was the next province to introduce ODSP,
Hmm.
which wasn't started till 1998.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And
Oh,
British Columbia didn't introduce PWD program until 2002.
Was it
wow.
really that?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and established.
That's shocking to me, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what they used to do, because I remember I had friends that were on, like, when I was younger and I was kind of semi-adult, semi-child still, and I had to go on income support and I was going to school and stuff, and but living independently. And I had friends that were on that had disability, but what it was, they were on regular welfare and they would just get a top up. And so a specific program for disability wasn't created. The PWD program, yeah, it wasn't created till
Yeah. Yeah.
2002.
Yeah, because I know in BC, when I got onto disability, it was, well, I mean, they still have the terminology there. It's I mean, somebody could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but unless you both know, but it's what is it? Income assistance. It's they call it employment and assistance or something like EI. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So it's kind
yeah.
of like as you mentioned, Cassandra, it's like a top up. It's like they'll say, yeah, you have a designation, but it was a top up.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah, but it was just
barriers.
regular welfare. It wasn't an
Yeah,
independent it wasn't a independent income support
yeah, yeah.
program
But
for
like here in BC, Brent, like we can talk about that they did have disability pensions
Right. Yes, they did.
prior to about 94
Or
because
yeah.
that's when they started to like kill them
so
off.
Hmm.
yeah, so prior to 94,
Yeah.
that would have been like a lot of those were the those 50/50 cost sharing programs that were basically the federal government said, "Hey, let's do this," and then they negotiated with the provinces to administer them and pick up 50% of the
Yeah,
tab.
Mm.
1966 that you mentioned. You referenced.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what that would have
Oh,
been.
okay. And then there was a
Yeah.
Yeah.
until 94, and then they government says, "Oh no, we don't want people to have pensions.
Yeah.
Let's scrap it." Yeah,
Well, it was
Well,
Mike
yeah.
Harcourt that
yeah,
said,
like
I don't need no sticking pension.
yeah, yeah. That
Exactly.
was
And
Mike
then
Gordon
so
and Mike Harris.
the
Yeah.
next one after BC, so BC was 2002, but
Wow.
Manitoba, so these are the very first provinces. And so Manitoba um introduced their program in 2005, which was
Oh.
Manitobans. It was a person with a disability designation.
Mhm,
It was in part of existing employment and insurance assistant program, and
mhm.
the specific no designation known as employment and income assistance for
It's kind of
persons
like
with
how
disabilities.
BC had their terminology in there too, and it was just basically on like based on like welfare, and it was like a top
Yeah,
up. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
They
and
still
this
have
is
all
more
the rules
based
and
on employment insurance
yeah,
kind of thing. And
yeah.
then Saskatchewan didn't, they introduced the Saskatchewan
Oh,
Assured Income for Disability
mm-hmm.
in 2009.
Oh, that's
Yeah, so
Wow.
oh,
like if you, but there's even just between Alberta creating AISH in 78 to Ontario creating ODSP in 98, that's 20 years.
yeah,
Yeah, wow.
that long.
And then yeah, and then they start to roll out a little bit closer together,
So
the
basically,
other
we'll just say
provinces.
that Alberta was the smart one,
Hmm.
and everybody else was dumb.
Well, in a way, and I think I find it ironic because I see some of the people in Alberta, like I just want to say who was
I was just while you're pulling that up, I was just referenced a cartoon character just the other day. You know, Gazoo. You know, Dum Dum.
I'm not sure.
It was a
so I mean I know it was a PC, so it was so 1978, so it was the progressive conservative, the he's Saint Peter Lougheed. Um
Mm.
like I mean, and Peter Lougheed, he was a progressive conservative,
oh wow.
and that was the guy. Like I thought it was Lougheed, but I wanted to double check because I
Mhm.
always put my foot in my mouth if I don't.
Mm.
But yeah, like it's like, I hear my current premier, she likes to invoke Peter Lougheed would have liked this, when in fact she totally misses the point of what it was. Peter Lougheed who she likes to invoke all the time, that
Mhm.
actually created AISH.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And it was not created. It was created based on the fact, it wasn't created on you couldn't work at all.
Mhm.
Even in the earliest original form of the act, which of course has been modified over the years up to present,
Of course.
it said it was for people whose disability severely impaired
Hmm.
their ability
Mhm.
to work enough to sustain themselves.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, you're on AISH, you can't work at all. No, it's like it recognized the fact that even permanent and progressive disabilities have episodic parts to them,
Hmm.
Mhm.
where you might be able to work 1 month and not work the next,
Right.
or and you might not be able to work for a year, but then all of a sudden you can get up and you can go to work full time for 3 months, and then your body gives out and you're back on the ground and can't do. So it was recognizing it. It also recognized the idea, like, you can't, even if you could work part time on a more regular basis, it often wasn't enough to pay the bills, like pay your rent, even, let alone
Mhm.
food and utilities and all
Yeah.
the other necessities, or even the cost of living with a disability.
Oh yeah, those are extra costs way above. Yeah,
So
way.
in 1978, Daniel Smith's icon, Peter Lougheed, that she likes to invoke, and which is what's so maddening about the creation of this ADEP program, is they're basically taking away. They told it was going to be more generous earning exemptions, and they've decreased our ability to work. They're not only taking $200 away from us, but if they decide that we're going to work, they're only exempting $350 instead of the 1,072 that I'm currently 100% exempt on.
Mhm.
And so it's just, like, if she actually did her homework, she would know that this was not never the intention. Um, some people on AISH, many people AISH have an inability to work at all. there's also many people on AISH that aren't able to work in their current circumstances, but if they could get like proper assessments and assistive tech training on assistive technology and things like that, they might be able to work a little bit more than a little bit more.
Mhm.
Well,
Um,
the term that I always use, Cassandra, is accidentally on purpose.
yeah.
Accidentally on purpose,
Okay.
and really, you can point to any government policy, especially when it has to do with PWD or people with disabilities.
Mhm.
So much of their policy is accidentally on purpose. It's like, whoops,
Yeah.
sorry about that.
Yeah,
You know,
or the theme that
Well,
I hear lately, it's, oh, well, we recognize that there's more to do. We've raised the rates 5 times, and
yeah.
I'll
well,
tell you something.
pat on the
I've read, so here's Daniel Smith's problem, and I think a lot of people don't understand this.
Mhm.
There's something called so there's this guy Preston Manning. I think you all remember him from the
Yeah,
Reform Party.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
yeah.
And then of course like some things came out about his connections with white supremacists like Wolfgang Droege and the Heritage Front, and they were never able to break the ceiling
Mhm.
of being official opposition. And they, once they became official, they started actually coming out with a lot of their ideas and being telling people what they really thought, which was, like I was a single mom at the time, and I was a recipient of the Mulrooney daycare subsidy, which I still had struggled to find work within daycare hours, but
Mhm.
it at least allowed me to do some odd jobs and stuff like that. You know, and 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 it gave me some hope that maybe eventually somebody would hire me
Mhm.
on a more long-term, full-time, permanent basis within those hours. But they were talking about like basically the things they were running on was they were going to kick all single mothers off of welfare because they don't
Mhm.
believe in income support or welfare. They don't believe in that. They were going to kick them all off, and then they were going to get rid of the daycare subsidy at the same time. And we shouldn't get day. And I'm like, I'm sitting there as a
Oh,
single mom going,
oh,
if I can't get a job that allows me to pay for daycare, which is like equal to my rent,
mhm.
Mhm.
right? Like I'm having trouble paying my rent on the employment. How am I going to pay for daycare? And if I can't pay for daycare, how am I going to work and
Exactly.
pay? And my only option would be going back to, like another era where women often married and ended up in abusive relationships because they just needed somebody that was going to pay the bills for them while they took care of their
Mhm.
kids.
Mhm.
And that was the situation. I'm like going, really? Like this is what you want to do? But if you read, he wrote this thing, it was his manifesto. I always tell people it's like his Mein Kampf, but it's called the Reform Party Blue Book, and this was authored by
Mhm.
Preston Manning. And Preston Manning, I mean, he very specifically talks, like if you look at Daniel Smith's use of the notwithstanding clause against labor, this isn't just an attack on teachers, it's not just an attack on labor, it's a test to see what she can get away with.
Mhm.
um, because she's already expressly said she wants to use it on other legislation to trample other charter rights. And ADAP is an example of taking away charter rights.
Yeah.
We do have certain things that are protected under various pieces of legislation in Canada, and she's testing the limits of what she can get away with the notwithstanding clause because she wants to. Because one of her advisors and a lot of people, I still get people asking me like, really, Preston Manning's there? It's like, yeah, don't you remember the report? Like she paid this guy
Mm.
a $250,000 of our dollars, of our tax dollars,
$1 million.
to do well, it was a quarter million, to do a report that he had already written.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's like, this is no accident. She's paying him this money in this
Yeah.
way because he's her advisor.
Of
And
course.
if you read the blue book, the Reform Party blue book, if you read it and see what he talks about when he talks about rights
Mhm.
and what he thinks equality means, he
Mhm.
doesn't believe in equity. able,
Mhm.
and he doesn't like when he talks about rights,
Mhm.
and he really doesn't believe in human rights. He does not believe in social programs. It's really about survival of the fittest.
Oh,
If you're not fit enough to survive without a social contract with the rest of that, then you don't deserve to live, basically.
Yeah.
oh,
I mean,
wow.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, but this is the kind of thing. And like when he reached official opposition status, um, at the time, like he was really, they became, the Reform Party became really bold about talking about these things. And it's part of the reason they couldn't break the ceiling, as it wasn't just the neo-Nazis like Wolfgang
Mhm.
Droege and the Herd.
Yeah.
It was also the fact that they started talking about these really regressive ideas, attacking the rights of our most vulnerable people in society. And
I
and Daniel Smith has got this old, I mean, somebody said, is he really there? He's a dinosaur. And I went, yeah, so is Trump. What's your point? Yeah, he's really there. Every once in a
yeah.
while, something will be reported and his name will come up in a
Yeah.
policy of hers,
Okay.
and you'll see, and that's the playbook she's running off of.
Okay.
She is running off of, it really is an attack on everybody's rights. It's not just labor rights, it's not just human rights. It's like, whether it's the notwithstanding clause over the strikes,
Interesting.
or LGBTQ or trans youth, or and disabled youth in the classroom as well when they cut EAs. I
Mhm.
mean, this is all an ideology that says that we don't care about the most vulnerable people in society, and we don't think we should have to support them. We don't think that that's a fair social contract, and it should be survival of the fittest. And
Yeah.
if you're not fit enough, it doesn't matter that you paid into these systems your entire life and then suddenly need them.
Well, I just wanted to break in for a
Yeah.
30-second rewind because you were talking about childcare just a moment ago, and I wanted to break in with my own personal experience of that because, again, like I always share, is that for the last 12 years, the BC government here has been clawing back my survivor's pension. As a widower, I get my survivor's pension clawed back. But so right at the beginning, when I saw all this perverseness going on, I wrote all those emails, right? And one of the first ministries to get hold of me was the Ministry of Children and Families, and they said, "Well, Neil, that we do have a program for childcare for your son." And so again, this was when he was like, 5 and 6. Like he wasn't even 5 yet when my first wife died. So they said, we have this program for childcare for your son, and we'll pay up to $1,000 a month for the childcare. But then I'm saying, well, okay, so you're gonna pay a stranger, to be a childcare for my son, but you're clawing back $800. It was my pension my pension my the
The
total
survivor's
amount
pension.
my total amount of my service pension is 800 about $800. So they're clawing that back, but they'll say, well, but we'll give you $1,000 actually, but it won't be you, it'll be a stranger.
We'll
We'll
get
give
somebody
you
else to look
We'll
after you.
give a
Well,
thousand dollars to
doesn't
a stranger to look after your son,
Wow.
but
so
we won't give $800 for you to look after your son.
Yeah.
well,
Like, you
but
see how
but but
stupid that is? You see
Oh,
how stupid
but
that
I
is?
got a question for you, because like,
Yeah.
so my mother was a recipient of the survivor's pension, but
Hmm.
at the same time she was getting it when I was growing up, I was getting, there was also a portion of it, like for my, like I got a survivor's pension, like for me, that was specifically went towards me as the child, which I don't believe, is that also like, is your son getting that, and is he also
My son is now getting what's called the orphan's portion.
yeah, the
Uh,
orphan, okay.
but that only came into effect uh, because of me, and I mean, if it sounds like I'm pumping my own tires,
No, no, no.
but I was going to say it's for here in BC. It's because of me, and I reached out to Sam Sullivan,
Oh yes.
Right.
and bless his heart, it was Sam Sullivan who said, "I will take up the baton for you, Neil," and
Well,
he
you
did.
should have, because that's
He
a
said,
federal benefit. He should have been getting that immediately when you started getting the survivor's pension. So they actually owe you
"Yeah."
money.
Well,
Mhm.
They owe
I know
him
they do.
money.
I know that's why I've been fighting it for 12 years.
Yeah.
But at least Sam Sullivan, bless his heart, he was able to reverse the orphans portion of it. But still, I'm still getting like over $500 clawed back of my portion of the benefit is still being clawed back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
No.
No, I know, but
it's
I
just
was
silly
just
to me.
asking.
It's just silly to me that the Ministry of Children and Families said we'll pay a
We'll pay
stranger
for
a
you to
thousand
get
dollars a month
for childcare, but you
to
won't
look
give me
after
my
your
money.
son,
We can't look
but
at
we won't honor the $800 service pension. I mean, like how stupid is that though? Like it's
It's
just bananas.
ignorant. It's
I know it makes
ignorant.
no sense.
Bananas.
It's like the BC government when I was there forcing me to apply for family maintenance. And the irony of it is my ex at the time, I mean, he was a deadbeat. He wasn't paying it anyway. It caused me more grief trying to get him to pay it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like
Well,
so some months
here.
I would get it and some months I wouldn't. So I mean, what was the point?
But
Like you
here's
can't,
another example though. Like I had injured myself when I was working for a corporate employer, and so they of course part of the policy. And I mean, they're just receptionists. They just work at the ministry, right? They're just doing their job. And I said, and no slight on you. And they were embarrassed. They said we have to follow protocol. No, so you want me to fill out, go and get this form, and take this form over to EI to see if I'm still employable, if I could apply for EI benefits. Meanwhile, I'm already going through workers' compensation, and I'm going through another part of the EI program that for sick benefits on top
yeah.
of it. But they want me to go to the EI just to verify that I'm not going to be able to find any gainful employment in the very near
That's what
future.
your doctor does.
Yeah,
It's not
and
EI that
yeah,
does that.
and I said, "Here's the form from the doctor." It says that, yeah, but we need you to do it. So I go down to EI. They said, "No, you have to do this procedure." I get down there, Cassandra, and EI said, "What are you doing here?" Well, this is what I'm supposed to
This
come
is what the
for.
provincial
Yeah,
government's telling me to
and they
do.
said that's a bunch of red tape BS. And I said, "I'm in pain. I can't even sit here in the chair. I'm standing there like, sir, just
Yeah.
have a seat. It'll be a while." I said, "I can't sit down. Like I am having severe pain, and if I'm standing in one spot too long, I'm going to have even more severe pain." They're like, "Oh my God, you're in bad shape." I go, "Right, right." And I'm supposed to be relaxing because my physiotherapist was told me to take breaks and relax. Don't put strain on your
They're
body.
making you run around. Well,
Yeah.
like I had to get
Oh,
even, even applying for AISH, like I had a condition. Well, I just gotten colitis
yeah.
and I was dealing with that and I had to go apply for like I was, I ended up on spending through like when I was in the car accident, I ended up spending through my savings. Like I had a savings. I was about to buy a
Mhm.
house when I got hit by that truck. And I had to spend through all of that to sustain myself because I was thinking, oh, I'll be back to work anytime. This is what my safety net's for. Like
Mhm.
for the first 5 years after the car accident, I kept telling everybody, oh, I'll be work. I'll be
Mhm.
back to work in a few weeks or a few months or whatever.
Mhm.
But even in the process of that, there was a point where because I think the legislation was like something like if you're going to be unemployed for over a year, and at that point I had been unemployed long enough,
Mhm.
and wasn't eligible for EI for whatever reason. I can't remember. Oh, I think it had to do with because I was being paid as self-employed or whatever.
Mm.
And so I had to, I had to end up on, I eventually applied like months after the car accident. I eventually, after spending through my savings, applied for income support. And of course, and then I came to the realization I probably need to apply for AISH because I can't afford my rent.
Yeah.
And but I had to go down. They're like, you got it. They only had a couple offices you could go to, and I had to go down and stand in this. They're like, oh, you have to be there at this time in the morning and stand in this long ass lineup. And I'm like,
Yeah.
excuse me, I have colitis
Yeah.
and I'm in a bad flare up. I can't make it to the corner store.
And
Hmm.
then they're like
How the
spelling bee,
hell am
spell
I supposed
colitis.
to stand in a lineup? Like, you know what I mean? Like I have trouble making it to the gas station to get a to do anything, like to get gas or whatever. Like, but
Mm.
you want me to stand in a lineup for all
Hmm.
day? Like, how the hell am I supposed to do that? And that's not even talking about my other physical, because it was really a medication that caused the colitis. I was on the medication because of the pain, the
Hmm.
chronic pain I was that was induced by my injuries from the car accident.
Exactly.
And so I'm not even talking about those physical injuries. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
that was around,
that's another whole issue. Yeah.
yeah, that was around the
And,
time I just got a walker
but well,
and
even like the long lineups you mentioned too. Like a lot of the offices, they would only allow so many people inside the office at one point in time.
Yeah, I
yeah.
remember that.
Well,
Right?
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was why, yeah. And
I-
this is the middle of winter in Alberta.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Oh.
yeah, like
Oh.
I'm like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? I mean, I mean, eventually I was able to give somebody that accommodated that, but the hoops I had to jump through just to get that accommodation were ridiculous. It's like,
Well, and that kind of piggybacks off of like all the hoops have to jump through. It's like you're already, person is already disabled, no fault of their own. I mean, and acquire more disabilities as we age, and then having to prove, well, are you still disabled? Because it reminds me of back in, and I don't like to do the blame game on different governments, right? Because it's like governments love to blame each other, right? For well, when they were in government, they did this and that. But I mean, lived experience wise, going through a trauma, like I mean, the government caused me
but it's
PTSD.
traumatizing
Yeah,
having to apply for these
yeah.
programs,
But I mean,
and
they
and
caused PTSD and anxiety and
Yeah.
if you didn't
um,
have PTSD before you ended
oh
up
yeah,
having
you
other
inherited it.
disabilities you end up with PTSD just from having to deal with government.
Oh
So I'm
yeah.
gonna,
Well, because
like,
they make people reapply, and they try to be
well,
reassessed.
Well,
Yeah.
and
which is
even all
what's
the
happening in Alberta. Like I
yeah.
do want to give a positive note. So I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something positive I wanted to,
Sure.
which made me really
Positive is always
excited.
great.
So, as you know, like I talked about the notwithstanding
Yeah.
clause, and there's a connection to how we got disability programs and labor,
Hmm.
and we've got this, this labor action that's starting at probably going to end up in a general strike. But we went and
Mm.
one of the things when teachers were ordered back to work, students organized, thousands and thousands and thousands of students came out,
Yeah.
and we had already planned this ADAP rally, this rally against ADAP. It was yesterday. I had some other things that got in the way, and I ended up not making it. But so we had this. We had already organized this before the back to work legislation and the teacher strike, and then the teacher strike came down, and then the teachers were ordered back to work using the notwithstanding clause,
Mm.
and students decided to walk out. Well,
I,
they ended up their protest where they were walking out to the legislature was right around, we knew it was going to come just before we were, our scheduled
Mhm.
thing was. And do you know those students came out to rally in support of their teachers and for smaller class sizes and for to address complexities which include their other disabled students.
there
Like
are other
these,
peers. Yeah,
this
the
is
peers.
this is what they were their peers that are disabled. They
Oh,
were they were they were
hey,
standing up for, and they came out
awesome.
in the thousands. They came out to the legislature. I mean, it was all over the province, but they came out to the legislature. Um, and when our rally started, they didn't leave. You know what they
That's
did? It made me cry. Like I was
oh.
watching the live stream and I teared up because
Hmm.
all those students that came out to rally they stayed for our rally and
Oh,
cheered us on and cheered our speakers on. And some of those students with disabilities even got up and spoke.
oh,
And
that's great.
I could never have been prouder of the youth in
Mm.
this province.
Hmm.
You know,
That's
they,
fabulous that they standing up for, for their education and their peers. I mean, people they're standing
Their
for people.
peers, but also the compassion and
Yeah,
understanding of social policy,
exactly.
and their compassion for their fellow Albertans,
Yeah,
regardless of who
Yeah.
they are.
yeah.
You know, if you saw some of the vitriol, like Janice Irwin, it's funny. Marie Renaud, our disability critic, she posted the ADEP rally. I didn't see, but
Mhm.
Janice Irwin, who's openly gay and an MLA, the vitriol towards her, it doesn't matter what the subject is, and it was just gross. And when she was talking about disability, like the attacks, and I'm looking, and these are adults,
Mm.
and then I look at our youth, and I like that gives me hope, because the
Yeah.
youth get it. They're like,
Mhm.
we're your future. we're
Yeah.
we're some of us are. I mean, some of those grade 12 students are already able to vote. They're already able to go for a beer, because it's 18 in
Yeah.
Alberta, and many of
Mm.
them are going to be able to vote within a few months.
Oh,
Right? And they're
that's
and
right.
and they're saying, like, we're your future. We're also future voters, and some of us are
Mhm.
going to be voting really soon. And
Mhm.
and you better listen. And I wish every adult in this province, like some of these people that are saying the gross things and trolling people, I wish they had the compassion that our youth have. Our
Mm.
Yeah.
youth are they were amazing. They were amazing.
Well, that's a perfect mic drop because you know what? We're at the end of the hour, Brent. So let's drop the mic, stop
Sure.
the show. It's a
Yeah,
wrap. It's a
yeah,
wrap for part three.
yeah. That's awesome. Going through the timeline, I love history. I always loved history when I was in late elementary school. We studied a little bit of that, but more in depth, as we all know, about history in high school. My social studies teacher studied a lot of history too, and gave us a lot of those VHSs. Remember those VHS
Yeah.
tapes? Yeah, pop them
Yeah.
in there, and
The
it made us
big
watch it.
tall things, yeah.
Yeah, it made us watch all this and then take notes down and give an overview. Each person had an overview of their takeaway of what they saw. And I felt it was so educational of going back in time, of learning the provinces, like what were the capitals of each province and the territories and our great nation. And along the history, I mean, of who our prime ministers were back then. And I'm not going to get into all that, but I mean, who were the premiers back then? And
Yeah.
and and I
Yeah.
remember hearing, about like, how they treated people with disabilities. Like our teacher back then, I mean, that was way before I was even diagnosed to get on the disability.
Well, most
Yeah, and I was
do
shocked.
you know that for a period of time, not just disabled people
Yeah,
were institutionalized, but people, like, even like people that couldn't, like single parents, single
yes.
mothers, and
Mhm.
I mean, there was a lot of institutional, like they actually had homes
They would take
for
Well,
not just
parents
disabled,
away.
but for other people that were just in poverty,
Yeah,
like
and
exactly.
for whatever disadvantaged circumstance that made them vulnerable.
and
Hmm.
I
And
can I can say from my own experience, like I'm 58 or I'm going to be 58 soon
I'm
in
58.
in March, and you know, I remember as a kid, like I would go to the shopping malls and stuff, like back when shopping malls were the thing, and just just I would look around and go, well, why am I the only guy on crutches or in a
Hmm.
wheelchair here?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm thinking like, where are all the disabled people? And
yeah,
I know now
yeah,
that they were probably all locked away somewhere.
yeah. Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Yeah.
you know what? I'm just about a year older than you. I'm 59 in January,
Okay.
and and I had a guy in my elementary school in grade 6 and 7 with who had cerebral palsy, and with crutches and stuff, and he was at our school,
Hmm.
and all the kids, like, we protected him. Anybody stepped out of line, that kid was like he had all the friends, like,
Yeah.
and he had
Oh,
a yeah, like
yeah.
he was he his level of disability was more advanced than than yours is now.
Hmm.
And but he was able to learn with us,
Yeah.
and everything else. And the kids were actually the ones that we were the ones that we didn't bully them. And if anybody did bully them, like they learned a lesson real quick. You don't do
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
But so there were kids, there were other kids
Yeah.
when we were in school that were
Yeah.
going to regular school, that were
Yeah.
going out, that were not institutionalized. But you're right,
Mhm.
a lot still were.
Mhm.
I think that was the beginning of integration. And
It was. It was. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanna thank you, Cassandra, for coming on to doing up to like part three, and there's so many other great topics to talk about. People with disabilities, across our beautiful country, not across our beautiful political spectrum. That's for darn sure. Because there's other topics. The next time when I have you on, I'd like to talk about shelter rates with people with
I
disabilities.
would love to talk
Yeah,
about shelter
yeah.
rates and stuff.
I'd love to.
But I, there's yeah, like I would also like, yeah, like there's a few things like I'd like to dig down even into some of these timelines, like on the
Yes.
like to do with the, like what we're talking about, like institutionalization
Mhm.
and attitudes, and how we've actually, like, we've progressed in our attitudes and now we've regressed, because at one point
Yeah.
we were starting to look at it as a basic income, and now we're kind of fluctuating. Like I read some paper that was saying that that the Canadian disability benefit was based on a basic income, and it's not.
No.
No.
But I had a report when I was doing all my research for this. I found a report that was from 2000. So the income amounts were 2010 amounts, but it's actually, somebody actually dug into it as far back as 2010 and said, and was advocating for a basic income. I'm actually going to write to them
Mhm.
and ask them if they could update the numbers
Mhm.
for present, because I think that we could start a petition on this. I mean, every Canadian Counts has got a parliamentary petition out right now.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And of course, their whole disability insurance program, it actually involves it has no means test. It's for everybody, and it also includes a basic income in it. So
So,
I
Okay.
would encourage everybody to look up that parliamentary petition by everybody, every Canadian Counts, and sign it.
Very
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, because like when I mentioned about shelter, there's Alberta versus other provinces who have shelter portions in there. As we all know, across our country, they call it a rental crisis. I call it a state of emergency. Really, I think
No, it's a housing emergency. It
Oh
really
yeah,
is. I
exactly.
mean, it's gotten better in Alberta, ironically, but I
Hmm.
mean, but it's still not good. I'm paying $1,200 a month for a one bedroom,
Yeah, which
Mhm.
and
is still quite high.
it's still quite high.
Yeah.
And it's a
Mhm.
small one bedroom. Like I had a whole half of a house, two bedrooms, and it was huge for like 1,000
Hmm.
for years. And now I'm in a tiny, like I had to get rid of a lot of stuff, and I'm squeezed into
Mhm.
this tiny little place
Hmm.
for 1,200 now. Yeah.
Shrinkflation.
Yeah,
Yeah, shrinkflation,
yeah.
exactly.
How
Yeah.
rents are fluctuating big time, and we'll dive into all that about
Yeah.
the rent fluctuation and versus shelter. Why are governments wanting to keep shelter portion in when you don't have a fixed address versus fixed address, whatever it may be. We'll talk on that part.
Well,
Well,
and the one
I
thing
think that's
I
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
and the one thing I did want to say, I wanted to say this a little bit earlier on was, you know, a big thing is the stigma, right? I mean, we were talking about the offices going into the office and
Oh yeah.
the whole thing about empty your pockets, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
it all stems back to stigma.
Hmm.
And it's like, well, stigma against people with disabilities will allow that. I mean, it's just kind of an allowed thing. Anyway, I mean, we can punch
Yeah.
out, but
Yeah.
I did want to end off on that. That the whole
Hmm.
this whole thing of stigma, and it's somehow it's allowed for if you're for people with disability, they've allowed it. Like governments allowed it. So well, that's okay. It's just
Well,
people with
they've
disabilities.
fluctuated over the decades on it. Like as I
Yeah.
said, like there was a point where it started off as very stigmatized, and then it became less stigmatized, and now we seem
Mm.
to be trying to move the needle backwards. I mean, there's a push. Some of
Yeah.
it's but it's still a fight. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
not
Yeah,
it's not
and
good.
that's a very important conversation to continue on. Yeah, definitely. Anyone who's tuning in today, you're enjoying today's part three segment of this discussion. There's a lot more discussions going forward on people with disabilities across Canada and how policies are really affecting people's lives. It's not just affecting their lives; it's affecting their allies. It's affecting everybody in their community. It affects everybody in general. Like it's a whole ripple effect. And one of my neighbors said to me just the other day was, "Well, I mean, it doesn't affect anybody else. It just affects that you or the just you as an individual." I go, no, you're wrong. It actually affects everybody, anybody in their life or around them. Like so, you can become
Well,
disabled at any time.
and we talked about that, like, I've pushed this for a long time, and I know I hear more and more people, and it was at the R8 Up rally, is that anybody, everybody, if everybody will become more disabled than they are now.
Mhm.
Everybody, if
Yeah.
you have no disabilities at some point in your life, if you live long enough, unless
Yeah.
you suddenly die at a very young age. I mean, some people make it to 100 with very minimal disability. Some people don't, but everybody
Mhm.
experiences some form of disability
Mhm.
Yeah.
as we age, as we get older, regardless of who you are. And it could be from aging, it could be from an accident, it could be from any number of things. It could be from an autoimmune disorder that just suddenly gets triggered, and
Yep.
when you're living your best life and least expect it. But everybody becomes disabled at some point in their life, and people need to start recognizing that.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Well, I hope everyone has a happy Halloween and trick or treat. It's going to be a gloomy, stormy evening in BC. But you know what? It's a good time to sit back and watch the Blue Jays because the Blue Jays are going to be on tonight, starting at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They're playing in Toronto tonight.
That is literally all that's been on CBC.
Or you could
They
watch
haven't showed any other news
or you
except the
could
Blue
watch
Jays.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And
Yeah.
Yes.
you could do the Bueller,
Bueller,
anyone?
Bueller, Bueller. Anyone? Anyone? Thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Please subscribe, like, and share. And stay tuned to our next episode. And stay tuned to Cassandra Pollock joining me again in the very near future, and we'll continue of different topics regarding disability across Canada and how it affects you and versus the government and public policy changes that need to be modernized. Because like it's no win for anybody when government keeps people in legislative poverty, right? It affects their well-being, puts more strain on our healthcare system. I like to put less strain on the healthcare system. I like to see people housed. So stay tuned to those episodes. And then I'll be doing a more rant and raves coming up too. But stay tuned to my next guest on Monday, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Take care.
Cheers, everyone.